What's going on with these companies, bro? Why do they all have these weird satanic esoteric logos, dude?
What's the deal with
What's the deal with these billion-dollar companies having these bizarre satanic logos?
I guess like the big kind of overview question, and the thing I wonder about is like how much of this is like deliberate, like they're taking these symbols that they have some sort of understanding about and like embedding them in to have some sort of like, I don't know if they're trying to like, if it's magic or whatever you would say, or if it just by like kind of osmosis, these things like just culturally they've just echoed and echoed and echoed. Like I was talking to a friend yesterday actually about, I mentioned this kind of idea. I mentioned the podcast to him and this idea we had about like, you know, these symbols and logos. And he said that he was I forget where he said he used to work for, but I think it's some crypto thing. And he was he was helping like for them to make a logo. Like he wasn't making it himself, but he was kind of tasked with finding an artist and making sure that the process was going. And the guy like sent him a couple things and he just didn't like it. And then he finally sent him one he liked, but it was literally like the Star of David. It was literally that. And he's like, could you like change this a little bit? Like I like this logo and I like the general theme, but like we can't have the Star of David, you know?
Yeah.
I think eventually they changed it to a 7-point star. And it's like, you wonder, like, was that artist like doing that on purpose, or was it just because like it's a symmetrical thing that looks nice and you see it other places? It's hard to tell, and I think like it's kind of a combination of both. Like I think anyone who's ever done anything kind of artistic realizes that like things sometimes just sort of occur, and you can't, even like when we're filming this podcast, I'll get that a lot of like, I'll come up with some new idea or something about something I've been researching, and I'll say something that like makes perfect sense, but it's the first time I've ever like thought about it or said it, you know? And it's just like the Greeks, before like the Homeric tales, it's like, oh, muse, speak to me. And like a lot of the Christian writers talk about that too, about how like they're like inspired by something beyond themselves. So,
the muse. Yeah,
the muse.
So yeah, I wonder, are these esoteric symbols coming from the muse? And is there a muse that's from a higher place, and is there also a muse that's from a lower place?
That's the question. That's kind of
So I was wondering, so all these companies that we're going to reference here are most of them are in they've been created relatively recently when you look through human history. But do you know how far back like these kind of esoteric logos go? Like, because you have a lot of symbology like in ancient Rome, you know, and stuff like that. Was this sort of thing very present?
Do you mean like as far as like corporations and like
like
companies
just kind
and
of
stuff?
Yeah, and corporations, and kind of in the just the presence of it in society. Because I mean, these aren't just, I feel like this isn't just limited to corporations. It seems like it's kind of it's everywhere. But you know, because corporations, I feel like were a lot different in ancient times. It's not like the way that it is now, where you see like a logo, you see the Apple logo everywhere.
Well, even like, I mean, coins and stuff would have these sorts of things on them.
Really?
Like, I'd say it's as old as language, as old as anything, you know, like the symbolic kind of stuff is, you know, you look at like the ancient, like, pacts or like the Roman symbols, it's all the same stuff, you know, or the Egyptians, like if you're asking specifically about like this form of it we're discussing, about like corporate logos, probably since the inception of them, since there have been companies, there have been people like because people are inspired by things, you know, and artists like have always included this in their art, and these it's kind of just, and it's not even like an inclusion, it's just in the fabric of it itself. So I'd say it's like as old as you could date it, you know, since whenever the first like corporate logo was made. Even like old like tavern signs and stuff would have like symbols and things on it like that, you know. So
yeah. And just real quick before we start going through some of the evidence we've put together here, what exactly is it? Like what's the difference between like a kind of, you know, I can't think of any specific companies off the top of my head, but a logo that's just seemingly, there's no like satanic or esoteric ties versus like Apple, where it's got the apple with the bite out of it, reference to the Garden of Eden. Is there like, is there a tangible way to kind of describe the difference, or it's just literally just like being able to tie it to some sort of esoteric like symbol of the past?
I don't think there's ever a logo that is completely free from symbolism.
Really?
So I think it all has that on some level. Like a name of a company or something like that. Like, so I think the only kind of differences is you can look at is the like. They would be more specific, kind of like there are some examples you can point to about like this thing looks like this, and it's very versus like if you go to like Keystone Concrete or some local business, something, they usually have symbols too, but it might just be. But I don't think there's any such thing as like a secular logo, if that makes sense. I think they're all they're all involved in it in some way or fashion, whether how much Joe Schmo is aware of it or not. Like, I'm not saying that like the guy who runs the local auto body parts shop like and purposely has the Freemason sign on it, but or you'll see it on like barbershops a lot, like kind of square and compass stuff. Like I've noticed that, or even the swirl,
What does that represent?
Yeah, well, it could be like, I don't know exactly. Like it could be like a hypnotic thing. It could be like the caduceus,
I had a friend who had one of those, and I would try to like figure out, like, bro, what am I? It really is hypnotic.
It's just a hypnotic thing.
Spin, yeah.
A vortex.
A vortex, yeah. So,
well, I want to before we get into like the more specifics of talking about them, I want to kind of break down like the kind of big the big sort of categories of symbolism. So you have like these kind of major things, and I'm not saying it all breaks down to what I'm about to say, but a lot of them do. So you have like symbolism involving like astrology or astronomy, astrological symbolism having to do with the planets, and you'll see that a lot, like a lot. Having to do with the planets or the zodiacal signs or the stars. This might be the most prominent one we'll talk about today. So that's like kind of a major sort of field. And the ancients, they had the view it, and like if you read like there's this book called the 3 Books of Occult Philosophy by this guy named Agrippa, who he kind of in the Middle Ages, I think he was writing in the 14 or 1500s, like right before the Renaissance. He kind of made it his goal to like compile a lot of this information and put it into like almost a textbook of this stuff. So he's where you get a lot of this information about like old occultism and symbolism and stuff like that. And he discusses, and you can kind of see this more so, but the ancients and the medievals, they had this view of like the stars, they have a effect on us, and the patterns in the stars have some sort of effect, like in their how they look and in their own like patternization. So it's almost like this view of reality where like the higher touches the lower, this thing far away touches this thing where we are now. And so the symbol, like you look at like, the symbol of the goat or something like that. All of this stuff has this like embedded like magical meaning to it from his perspective. And they invoke certain things. So like the bull, it invokes kind of a more like a sturdy sort of stubborn animal, or like even this is like stuff is even in the Bible. Jesus talks about, the difference between like sheep and goats, like I will separate the sheep from the goats, and like, and goats represented, and you have Capricorn, I think is the symbol for goats. So this stuff is all like very much embedded like in the ancient literature and the ancients' view of things about the stars having an effect. So that's like why it's almost like when you have the symbol on Earth, you're almost you're like channeling something from the stars is kind of the idea. And even like you have like astrological magic practices where that's what they were doing explicitly, you know.
Interesting. So these symbols are a way to channel the energy from above.
It's the idea. And that's one way of looking at it, I'd say.
Okay.
And then the probably second biggest one is you have nature symbols. You know, we kind of already covered that. And these things, obviously, there's a crossover because you have depictions in the stars of animals and stuff like that. But you'll see nature symbolism, whether it be like the elements or animals or
Fruit.
or fruit, yes, like food and all these things. You'll see that very constantly. And then you have human body symbolism. You'll see that a lot, like hands, eyes, ears, every part of the body, the phallus, the sex organs, these sorts of things will be consistently used. Kind of similar, like a hand evokes a certain kind of image. Like you think about like the Freemasonic, like hidden hand. It's the idea of like hands are like how we interact with the world. It's how we like work with things and stuff like that. So it represents a kind of control over things. So like the hidden hand represents the hidden control, or like the eye is how you see things. That one's a little more obvious, but like, and obviously the eye is pretty prominent on like money and stuff like that. And then another big thing of symbolism is geometry. Like the pentagram or hexagrams, or there's a couple in here you have the there's that one called like the seed of life, which is like this I think it comes from Pythagoras, and it's we can look at that in a bit. Or you have the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, all of these kind of, and this again similarly, it's kind of like this idea that the universe has these fundamental laws, and like if you represent them, you can almost attract a certain sort of magic. So like the pentagram itself has a kind of like an ability to like store magical energy or something like that from its and have influence over people from just whatever. I don't know if the idea specifically is like because it's a like you imagine like if you want to put something in a controlled environment like water or something, you use a circular glass, or like if you want to put animals in a pen, you have to put a square pen around them or whatever shape it would be. So that's kind of the idea, is it stores and contains something within itself. And so like a kind of big theme is like more completed, like closed off symbols versus like more open things. Like a spiral would be a more open kind of symbol that would represent something else. And I'm trying to think if there's any other like big categories. Obviously you have like color and you have like, you could go through like instruments, even like tools. Those are kind of more minor categories of this stuff, but it all is just made to like kind of evoke things or like have a certain like influence over reality is sort of the idea. So
yeah, and I think some people have kind of the idea that whenever they hear the word magic or whatever, they think that like, oh, a demon's gonna come down and tell you to go buy stuff from Walmart or whatever. But like, I think that it's important to note that like these things, it's gonna make sense to the average population. Like it's not gonna be in your face like that this is like evil or demonic or they're trying to control you. Like it's magic isn't necessarily like people in black hoods around a fire sacrificing. Like it's not always that. It can make sense in reality. And I think like
that exists too, but
yeah, and I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but I think that when people hear that, that's a lot of times what they think. I think it's important to kind of make the distinction that that's not always the case. Like
I was actually I was listening to that Interesting Books guy. He was doing a podcast.
Great YouTube channel.
with the other dude who Program to Kill guy, the guy who he used to have a YouTube channel called Program to Kill, where he would which is based off of a book.
Did he get censored?
He got banned, yeah, and he started a new channel. But his kind of thing is he just uploads like old news footage of like interesting events involving like conspiracies. And they were discussing, I don't remember the guy's name, but the guy who started Walmart, he had there were cattle mutilations found like on his property and like near him, and there was also on his property itself they had an altar. There was some sort of, so like
it's just a coincidence.
It's very possible. In fact, I think it's if you look at the evidence, it's uncontrovertible that at least some of these people are actually practicing some form of witchcraft or ritual magic and stuff like that. Like they have some sort of belief that these symbols contain some sort of metaphysical abilities and importance. So
yeah, I guess just that like they might be doing these things, but the practical implications of the results, of what they're doing on the population, I think like it's gonna be very subtle. Yes. The population's not gonna again, a demon's not gonna come to everybody and be like, go shop at Walmart or whatever.
Well, magic works best, even like stage magic, when people don't know what you're doing, when they don't understand that, or when you talk about like stage magic, a magician having you pick a card, all of that relies on the fact that you don't know the things that they're doing. You don't understand the tricks. When you actually look up what they're doing and you learn about things like suggestion and things like forces, I don't know if you're probably aware of this because your family did.
Yeah.
I know your dad and your brother were very into that.
But not the
yeah,
not the bad kind of magic.
Not the demonic magic.
Having fun old time.
But it's kind of a similar thing where these symbols, if you don't know the kind of influence they might have on your, what they call it, subconscious or something, they would have more of an effect on you. They have, what's the word? It's like the subtle advertising, the
subliminal messaging.
Subliminal messaging. It's like that. If you don't know it's there, it's much more likely to have an effect on you.
Kind of almost like, well, I guess not exactly, but in a way, is it kind of like how you were describing earlier, like the cattle in a pen, like predictive programming almost, in a way where it's like,
that's kind of a symbolic thing. Yeah. Yeah. And I also think that's a huge part of it, is it's like you subtly are putting ideas into people's minds, and you get them to expect certain things or want certain things. Like with the rappers, they always have nice cars and they're flashing money and they have girls and stuff like that. This is what happiness
is. This is success.
Exactly. So that's a form of magic. I really do think that it's a form of you're embedding something into someone's mind in a way that they don't even have an understanding of. And even if it's not per se a demon doing it, even though arguably it is, it still has this effect where you're influencing people and getting them to act in a particular way. I think all this stuff, all this research on mind control and all that is really carrying on the tradition of this occult stuff, because the occultists were the ones who were into hypnosis and all that. It's just now in a more scientific framework. It's just the outer sort of clothing of it has changed,
Yeah, exactly. And I think people, when they hear scientific, they think the opposite of magic. They think, oh, that's reality, that's basis in reality. But these things, it's just the practical implications of magic. That's what science can oftentimes be.
Well, a lot of the biggest, most influential scientists were practicing occultists. You look at Paracelsus or John Dee or Isaac Newton. All these people were into magic and this
is it typically I guess is all magic, I'm pretty ignorant here, is it all kind of intertwined with demonic kind of satanic overtones and or undertones?
It really depends on who you're talking to. I mean, the people practicing this stuff would say no. A lot of them would say that they're doing divine magic, or they're doing magic for God, and and if you talk to Christians, they would say that it's all demonic. So there are different opinions on this. You can make you can come up with your own conclusions about it. The only thing I would really say on that front is you should just be careful. I wouldn't really recommend. I think it's good to study this stuff just so you're aware of it, but
have an understanding.
Yeah, I can't really recommend anyone practice this. Practice any form, or like even like you kind of look at it like you could say like business influence skills are kind of a form of this, but like is that evil? Like is it evil to like learn how to close a deal or something like that? Like is that demonic? Like I don't think so necessarily. So again, it's kind of just it's a very fluid thing, I think, but I think you just have to be careful with like because you don't know, like if you start interacting with spiritual entities, like how do you know if you're getting an angel or a demon? You know, let's say like hypothetically this stuff could summon angels. Like, how would you be able to, vet that?
It's probably not an angel.
It's probably it's probably a good idea to
just steer clear.
Be conservative. Yes. So
be aware of these things, understand it, know what you're looking at when you see it, but don't.
I would say it's usually there's this idea, and like if you read about like the UFO community, that like if you start chasing UFOs, then they'll start to chase you back, you know. So like it's kind of something where I think it's best to just sort of view it from a distance and like, but like if you're going in the desert like trying to summon UFOs, I would be that seems like a bad idea to me. I wouldn't recommend that.
You took a bad step.
But unless you have anything else to say, I think we can kind of get into the.
I think let's get into it. I think we should start with one that I think most people have they've heard the rumor, they kind of know. Let's start with Monster. It's pretty, I heard it growing up. My mom, she warned me of the it being 666. But if you could just from the perspective of somebody who's never heard of it, kind of describe.
Yeah. So well, this one it's funny because like most people know that meme of that like old woman or that like kind of middle-aged woman going at 666. It's the devil. Like, but the funny thing is like she's 100% correct. Yeah. The what makes the kind of claw marks are I forget if they're vase or it's a Jewish letter, and it's a Hebrew letter, and all of the Hebrew alphabet. All of the letters have a corresponding number, and they have a corresponding symbol that goes with them. And in Judaism, they kind of emphasize that the language itself has a kind of magical it has magical properties to it. Like it's like a divine language given by God is the sort of how they think about it. And Christians, there's some overlap with the thinking there, but it's like Jews more emphasize the kind of magical element of it. And the symbol for the letter of again, I think it's. I would have to like look it up again. You could probably while I'm talking about this, but it's a nail, and it has that it's slightly curved to the left. And it's if you look at the monster can, it is literally those Hebrew letters. And an interesting thing about that is they're nails. The symbol, like that's the nail letter. And the kind of it's kind of a weird way to think about it, but like Christ was crucified with 3 nails. So like, and it's 3 nails. So 666 being this kind of thing. Vav, is it Vav? Yes, Vav, V-A-V. Is that what I said before? Did I say the Vav?
I think so. I think it was close.
the Vav. And so yes, the monster energy can it is 666 now. Whatever, and it's the name is monster. You could think of that as like it's the number of the beast. It's so the symbolism kind of correlates there. Now like, are these people just edgy? It's possible. I mean, they're an energy drink company. Good marketing. Like, are these people like literal Satanists who are like putting this on their energy drink because? I mean, they're selling poison, so I guess they're pharmacon artists. But
no, so that's so that's kind of a like in your face. Like a lot of people seem to know about it. It's like you said, the name's monster. It's 666. It's really in your face. But as you start to kind of look into these things, it becomes a little more subtle, I would say. I'm curious. I see that you have Walmart on here. Would you mind explaining? It's the with the star in the middle between Wall and Mart.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm looking at. Where are you seeing
It's
that?
below the 2 red stars right there, on the right side.
Oh, that's just like pentagram.
Just the pentagram.
Symbol
Okay.
Symbolism. Yeah, it's just, and you see it a lot. Like here, you have like it's Texaco, Macy's. I mean, that's everywhere. Like you'll see that on like Christmas decorations. Like even like we have a Texas flag right behind you that has the pentagram on it. The pentagram might be the most used symbol. Maybe right behind like the eye. And
penta is a five-pointed star.
So like that's an example of like a geometrical symbol, and it's so. If you read like Agrippa, he talks about, or if you've ever seen that like old Da Vinci sketch of man, where it's like it's the man with his arms out. It's so the pentagram is supposed to be like the symbol for man. And a lot like this, it's not really. It's not picking up on the camera, but it's like you'll see like people with their arms out and their legs kind of spread, and then the head is the top of the star, and it also represents their in the classical kind of ways of thinking. There were 4 base elements that made up kind of material reality. You have fire, earth, water, and air. And those will represent the 4 parts of the star that are down.
The feet and the hands.
And then the spirit, and discussed in kind of like Neoplatonism and stuff, is the top part. And it kind of, if you connect that with the human body, it's the head, and it's a connection to the higher and stuff like that. So like we have our kind of like, this again, it kind of combines like the physical or like a human body symbolism with a geometrical symbolism with a nature symbolism. So like all this stuff is kind of coalescing into like these like hyper symbols. Like I think you could kind of discuss something like that really integrates a lot of these different things into one symbol like that, and it becomes some of this thing where it's like the symbol itself becomes like a bunch of knowledge is like stored in it, and a lot of this stuff, and that's kind of how symbols work.
What's the saying about symbols? It's man, I'm blanking on the saying, but it's something like where the higher level of existence is seen through symbols.
So, the idea is kind of that like the language of the higher is symbols, that like we can't, like our normal language is very like limited in a way, and it's only through a sort of symbolic portrayal that we can get like spiritual influences and stuff like that. And so like that's like the pentagram, and then you have the reverse pentagram, which is, if you think about it, it's like the pentagram is almost, you could look at it as like a positive symbol. It's this orderly kind of thing of connecting man to the spiritual. What the reverse of it is it's an inversion, and this is a very important concept to think about and to discuss when it comes to symbolism, because you have like the original kind of symbols, and then like oftentimes when you're viewing like satanic kind of stuff, or it'll be inverted, so like instead of like a mass, you'll have a black mass, where instead of like taking the Eucharist and doing these positive things, they'll sacrifice a virgin or whatever, so it'll be based off of like the good version of something, but it'll be like tainted and perverted. And so like when you flip the pentagram, now the symbol becomes a thing where you're putting the material in the lower over the spiritual. You're and you can represent this kind of as like egoism, or like whatever is lower in yourself. You're kind of narcissism, you're like hedonistic, like pleasure pursuing yourself, and you can say that is the highest thing, and you're putting it over any
like what's glorified at the rappers oftentimes.
Yes, like exactly. Like so like any pursuit of God is being put underneath the pursuit of the material.
Yeah. And I think that's a great example of like how like that's very pushed, especially on like young men and even young women to a certain extent, where it's just, you see them and they're with the girls and the money and the car. And then somebody goes, that's satanic. And you hear that and you go, what are you talking about? It's satanic. It's just a guy having a good time. And it's like, well,
it is.
It is literally satanic.
On a level it is. Yeah.
And you just perfectly described how it is. And I think that's important to understand. I think people hear satanic and they go, you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? But that's exactly, it was perfectly described as to how it is. So yeah. And like you said, that star is everywhere. It's one of those things where once you start noticing it, like you'll kind of see it everywhere. And
stars don't look like that. That's the funny thing. Like, have you ever looked at a star? It doesn't have 5 points to it, you know? Like, so clearly it's representing something besides a star, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point. And then something else that caught my eye here is the wings.
Yeah, well, again, this is another thing where, so the most, as far as I know, there might be an older depiction of this, but as far as I know, it dates back to Egypt, and it's the sun with the wings on its side, and it represents a kind of, it's the rising of the sun, or the sun flying over. And I don't know as much about this one. There's probably a lot more to it that I'm missing. But it does at least in like, as far as I know, I would have to look more into it. And it also has serpents on it that you can see, which is interesting. We can talk about serpents also. I don't know if we'll have time for that, but
do you mind discussing just kind of a brief synopsis on the serpent? So obviously it was in the Garden of Eden. And
well, serpent symbolism gets, I don't know if this might be another podcast episode, but very briefly, like, without getting super schizo about it, serpents are, you could look at it as like back in the day, snakes represented the most dangerous thing to human beings. They were like the number one animal that would kill humans, and because they're one bite and you're dead, and it's not like a lion or something where it's this huge animal you can see coming, like it can bite you, So it represents kind of, often like times demonic forms are represented symbolically, because it's like they're hiding in the grass somewhere waiting to bite your ankles and stuff
into
like
God's
that.
Creation.
Yes, and there's and again, even serpents are sometimes depicted as a non-negative symbol. Like in the Gospels, Christ says that we should be as wise as serpents. So like serpents can also be seen as kind of like having a sort of cunning to you, and careful.
We're good. Oh,
a sort of cunning in like a good way, like snakes are very like prudent, they're very careful with how they use their venom, and they can wait for prey and stuff like that. So like almost every symbol can be looked at in either a positive or a negative way, unless it's like actively like an inversion, like even like speaking of like the inversion again real quick, like you think of like an upside down cross, a reverse cross. That actually wasn't initially a satanic symbol. That was, what I'm talking about? The cross of St. Peter's, where he was crucified upside down. And so an upside down cross was just to represent St. Peter. It wasn't even a like satanic negative thing, but now like modern Satanism uses a reverse cross to like represent, the same kind of thing.
They can't create.
They can only pervert and destroy.
Invert, steal.
I remember having a conversation, one of the priests at my church was giving a talk on like, I forget exactly what, but he went into sin and how we view sin in our culture as like, oh, it's fun. Sin is fun. It's this thing. And he's like, if you actually like think about it, sin is a very boring thing. It locks you into the same patterns of addiction and stuff. And it makes your life very dull and boring ultimately, which I thought was, again, that's another inversion. We invert that to say, sin and this stuff is actually like, it's like pleasurable and stuff. It's like, nah, it really isn't, like what is really pleasurable has nothing to do with like the very hedonistic aims of life,
Yeah, absolutely. And the only way to elevate is to repent and to not sin consistently. And like you said, that's inverted. And the next, this is one that's very popular.
Well,
but
real quick before you go into the new one, I guess we should say that some of the wing symbolism, you have, there's a casino that has that sun and the wings on it. I can't remember which one, but you could probably find an image and put it up. And then you have Harley Davidson. I think that's Chrysler. Bunch of car companies. Southwest Airlines has it on there. And also, it's very similar to like the eagle symbol you'll see oftentimes. Like that's on the dollar bill. It's a Roman symbol with like you have the wings spread out in the eagle head, which the sun god, you have Ra, and then you have his son Horus, which was a hawk. So it's kind of this idea about like, the sun was often depicted as a bird because it flies overhead, and there's probably a much deeper thing you could speak about it, but on a very basic level. So like even in like the United States government also use an eagle, and it's holding like the arrows in its hand, and all that. The eagle's also a pentagram, actually. It's a so they, it's
everywhere.
it's a merging
ubiquitous.
It's a merging of the symbols. So the wing symbols, you can find it in like an old like British like coat of arms. They also had eagles that would have these symbols that were like this. So
do you know it was the Roman eagle like that as well? Because it was
yes,
head to the side.
Yeah.
So most of them.
Yeah. It all follows the same stuff. Yeah. And all of this stuff is like influenced by the thing that came before it. It's this sort of there's a tradition going on that it's constantly referencing back to. It's like how like all the mythological stories are always like referencing the other mythological stories. It's like none of this stuff exists in isolation. It's always constantly this self-referential thing that's building on the symbolism and expounding on the symbolism. So the last one we have.
I wanted to ask you about the all-seeing eye. We briefly mentioned it earlier. I see that you have it with the Google Chrome logo, which never occurred to me. Is that what that is in the middle with the three colors around it?
Do I have that here?
It's on the other one. It's on the bottom right. Well, the bottom left below the Southwest Airlines. With the eyes right there.
So that's not an eye. It could kind of be looked at. It sort of looks like an eye, but no. The Google Chrome logo is 666.
Really?
It's
how so?
you. Well, if you look at the colors and how on your paper, if you look in that symbol next to it, it's like 6. It's like this. Like
it is.
6,
That's
6.
crazy.
Yeah, it's 3 6s like put together in a
wow.
And like the circle being the same for them all.
Wow. And then the App Store, the Freemason logo.
It's the Freemason logo, which was also the it's the Apple App Store, but it was also the Android App Store, which
really?
I didn't know that. Yeah,
just another coincidence.
Like an older version of it. Yeah, it's also the square and compass. Yeah, which is
crazy.
Or the G. We're kind of I was kind of waiting to rapid fire.
Yeah.
So I guess we could kind of do that now.
Yeah.
The Gmail logo is the Freemason apron. Pretty explicitly. The Facebook logo is that one's a little more kind of out there and esoteric. It's another Freemason logo. You can I imagine you can just put this up there for people to look at.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think I'll just rapid fire through a lot of these. You have Apple, the bitten apple. That one's pretty obvious. The Garden of Eden. It's kind of like Steve Jobs looking at like computers as being this like the forbidden fruit that you're accessing some form of like reality and technology and moving on. There's also that I actually should probably stop at that one. So there's this constantly technology is associated with demons in the demonic line, and even like in the biblical tradition, you have technology being associated with Cain, like with Cain and Abel,
Really?
like the descendants of Cain are associated with. It talks about how that the descendants of Cain were the ones that were given this technology by the Nephilim, and by these kind of different things, and so like in that it comes from it's almost like a demonic thing. And in the way it's talked about it's not that God doesn't want us to have technology and tools and stuff like that, but it's that we're receiving it before we're ready for it is the idea. And so like, I think that correlates perfectly to reality about like, cause you give us like the ability to split the atom, we build a bomb with it.
Yeah.
It's like the first thing we do is think about how to like,
it could power our civilizations.
Yeah. But we use it to
first
harm.
thing we do.
Yeah. We use it to do harm. And so like symbolically, like oftentimes technology is seen as coming from like demonic kind of forces. And even like in the UFO stuff, it's often talked about how like a lot of the like fiber optic cabling and stuff is stuff that we've retrieved from like UFO crash sites. So wherever this stuff is coming from,
and UFOs are obviously demons.
There's overlap. There's definitely overlap. But so this kind of idea, and that's just the modern way of portraying the symbol of it. It's like, is this literally happening? I think so in some way, but like from a symbolic perspective, definitely. We're definitely receiving this from some, and like oftentimes, again, a lot of these scientists, where these occultists, and they talk about that, like they got the ideas for their stuff from these things, from these kind of occult practices and stuff. Like John Dee. Maybe the most famous occultist ever. He was the one who invented the instruments that Christopher Columbus used to navigate to America. He was like a big deal, like even in like the scientific things. Like he made like stars, like this kind of, I don't know exactly what the tool would be, but it used the stars to like basically you could go in one direction for a long time.
And that thing, like if you look at it, I don't know the exact name off the top of my head either, but it looks so cool. It's like a work of art. And it's funny how innovation and art sometimes parallel like that. And I think it's really interesting how these symbols, when you look at it from this perspective that you're kind of describing here, it transcends time. You were talking about, yeah exactly. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So the Ben apple, that apple. Kind of, it's sort of
you see the Garden of Eden, beginning of time, and then Apple, the pinnacle of technology, and they both.
Sorry, I don't mean to, but speaking on that, the tradition for, like the Orthodox tradition of like the view of like the Garden of Eden and what happened was that God intended man to eat the fruit at some point. That there was, but it had to come in its own time. And the sin itself wasn't that he ate it. It was that he ate it too early, that he wasn't prepared for whatever the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life was. I'm confusing things. I've read, my mind's been poisoned by occult literature, so I forget which thing comes from which thing. So that kind of idea, but the Gnostics more view it in a different way about like, God was this jealous, like evil God who didn't want us to have true knowledge and stuff. And so the biting of the apple actually represents a liberation. So that's kind of, I imagine that's how Apple is depicting it,
Yeah, I've heard, I was recently listening to a Tucker Carlson episode. I'm forgetting the guy's name, but we'll put it on screen. And the guy described the apple from a perspective that made sense, but I had never really heard it before, where he was like, it's almost like the serpent was Morpheus with the red pill.
Yeah. Well, the Matrix is a very Gnostic film.
Fascinating.
It's explicitly Gnostic.
Yeah. Very interesting perspective.
Yeah. Well, that kind of, again, this comes from like different interpretations of like heretical sects of Gnostic Christianity interpreting it in different ways. Like, so, and also a quick thing that's of interest, the actual fruit of the tree is not known. It started to get depicted as an apple in the Middle Ages. But like in ancient texts, there's we don't really know what the fruit was. There is an idea that like it does correspond to some like fruit we have now. I've heard people talk about it as like a pomegranate or something like that, but we don't actually know. It's possible it doesn't have any correspondence to like a fruit we have now, and that it's something different. But it's not like the apple. The depiction of it as an apple comes later with like Renaissance art and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. One thing too that is kind of fascinating is the hexagram. Is there any logos that you have here with a hexagram on it?
No, that one doesn't get used a lot because it's a little more charged, because it's the Israeli flag.
Yeah. It's that one's fascinating to me because you had told me a few weeks ago about how on Saturn there's this storm that's in the shape of a hexagram, and scientists will give an explanation, but they don't have any idea why.
I was saving Saturn. I want to get into Saturn. I guess we can get into it now.
Yeah. I think we should. I just wanted to say that I think it's fascinating how realistically we have no idea why it seems like we don't have any practical understanding as to why that's on Saturn, like the scientific explanation for it, but it is there and it's very clearly like symmetrical. But it's also like that's the one thing that you hear about being everywhere in nature is the hexagram. So I think it's
you see it on like
beehives,
like flowers,
and then you go down. Like I think you can go down. Forgive me if this isn't exactly correct, but I think it is that you can go down to like almost a molecular level, and it's there, and it's everywhere.
And
that's the intertwining between occultism and science.
Water or any solid structures. Like if you take liquid water, it's kind of these different molecules more bouncing around. Like as something gets more and more material, more and more solid, it has more and more of a structure to it. So like air, like water vapor has like, it's very wild. And then when it becomes water, it has more of a structure, but it's still like kind of bouncing around and it's more kind of chaotic. And then when you get to ice specifically is hexagrams, like how the molecules bind hexagrams and then it's connected hexagrams together. So yeah, it's like, again, these symbols aren't just like depictions of something man-made. It's hinting at something, the kind of how the laws of reality and stuff, like that's why like Pythagoras and Plato were very obsessed with studying like math and geometry, is because they thought that you could get to some core truth by having an understanding of these things.
It seems like they may have gotten close.
Yeah, I think there's a reality to it. And even if you read, there's this book called the Philokalia, which is a collection of writings from Mount Athos, the Christian monks from Mount Athos. And they'll also talk about numbers and like how this stuff. So it exists in everything. All like the ancient traditions have these kind of thinkings, this way of thinking about things. But so getting into Saturn is a pronounced, almost more so than anything. It's very pronounced in the symbolism of this stuff. I mean, you have like I don't know if I included. Well, there's a car literally called a Saturn, which is pretty funny.
Grok kind of vaguely looks like Saturn.
Yeah, you mentioned this one, which I had never seen before. The Grok symbol is Saturn. Like it's kind of hard to see, but yes, that is Saturn, like by far. Or like oftentimes you'll have, so Saturn is connected with Kronos, he's a Titan. He's an older god than the Olympians, people like Zeus and stuff like that. Kronos actually was the father of like Zeus and Poseidon and Hades and all these Olympian gods. And he's often symbolized or he's talked about as being the god of time, that he kind of has a function of like controlling time, and like in the way of like how human beings are limited by time and eventually death will come for you. And actually the Grim Reaper is a symbol of, it's a Saturn symbol. Agrippa talks about this in those books I was mentioning, about the old man with the kind of shawl, the like black kind of I think it's a shell or whatever you would call it. And the scythe is the ring of Saturn going around it. And if you think about it in that way, like the Nike swoosh is a scythe. That's the most prominent one. I'm struggling. I probably have more stuff written down here. Internet Explorer is a Saturn ring. Amazon has a Saturn swoosh on it.
Yeah.
The Amazon logo.
It's just a smile.
Internet. I already said Internet Explorer. I'm kind of looking. I should have organized these better than I did.
Space program, is it anywhere? It would be
that's
all
something
over.
different. That's a different thing we can get into.
Xbox.
Xbox, yes, Xbox has a Saturn swoosh. So you have like these circles with swishes around them, or just the swish itself, or just the ring itself. Usually that's referring to Saturn. And so Saturn is kind of viewed as like, it's like the reaper of souls. And I would like to preference, like everything I've been saying here, I'm not saying that any of this stuff is necessarily true. Like when I talk about the occult stuff, I'm not saying that that's a correct way to interpret things. If there is a correct way to interpret these things, I'm just giving you different perspectives on these things, that how different groups of people and different kind of people would use these things to represent certain things. So I'm not necessarily saying that any of this stuff is leading to the ultimate truth or anything like that. I'm just an observer of these things, We're
just providing evidence here.
So I'm not
looking at some stuff.
Yeah. So like if anyone's suspicious of me, like or whatever, like I'm here to deliver information.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all I'm trying to do here.
We're not coming from a place of this is absolute truth and this is the doctrine. This is just evidence that we found.
Yes. So Saturn is also connected, well, like you said earlier, with the hexagram, which the hexagram, you can probably pull up the Star of David or the hexagram itself and show how the inside of it is a cube, which this, if you also can look at like the North Pole of Saturn, you can find like space footage that could or could not be true. Who knows? Like, who knows if this is just like some fake CGI stuff and it's all just a fiction. But again, this is how they depict it, so it kind of doesn't matter. But the North Pole of Saturn goes in a direction. I forget if it's clockwise or counterclockwise. I think it's clockwise. And if you look at the black cube connects with all the Saturn symbolism of Mecca. You could look at that as like the cube inside of the hexagram, and the Muslims, they go around it in the same direction that the Saturn North Pole has the swirl, the vortex in it.
And do you know, does the hexagram move on Saturn, or does it stay?
I don't know. I actually don't know.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it doesn't move. And in post, I'll verify that fact.
Okay, I don't think it rotates. I think it remains static.
The square in Mecca the cube in Mecca doesn't rotate either.
Yeah. So there's that. And then there's obviously with like Judaism, they have the black cube that they put on their head also. And then if you think about the symbol of the cross in Christianity, a cross is an unfolded cube, and you could probably find I know there are diagrams online that kind of go into that. So it's almost like, the cube, again, I'm not saying any of this stuff is necessarily any true depiction of reality, but it's how certain people viewed things. The cube is this idea about like, we're kind of like how David Icke, like prison planet sort of stuff. Like we're trapped in this material reality, and Saturn itself is putting out some sort of frequency or signal that keeps us trapped in the material realm. Like David Icke, I'm a fan of David Icke. I don't agree with like a lot of his ideas about like, he's kind of a Gnostic. Well, actually, he's pretty explicitly a Gnostic, and but I have a lot of respect for him in the sense of like, I do think he's concerned with exposing the truth, even if I think he gets things wrong. But he discusses how this is true, that like we as human beings only like our vision and what we can hear and stuff is limited to a certain range of frequency, that you can only see things within a certain light spectrum, but the light spectrum is much wider than the things we can see. And so the idea is that Saturn itself is like some sort of like radio station or something like that. That's like
projecting reality.
That like, or like it's a disruptive signal that it keeps us limited to like a certain way of viewing things, and it keeps us like on a lower level of consciousness and stuff. And so Saturn keeps us this way so that it can reap us. Basically, it can like reap our souls and our energy. This is the idea. Again, I'm not saying this is true. It's just a symbolic representation in how certain people view things. So I'm trying to think, is there anything else you can think of when it comes to Saturn?
No, I think that encompasses. So I guess, so then, just specifically on this one, I think this is good. So like, why would Xbox, let's just say they hypothetically did, why would they go out of their way to make that their logo? You know, so this is a console that's often being used by teenagers, sometimes even younger than that. Why would this console company go out of their way to make their logo represent kind of such this heavy concept?
I don't know if it's conscious. Again, like I don't know if they necessarily did it on purpose, but again, reality is not just people doing things. It's this kind of interplay of like spiritual forces and symbolism and all this stuff. Like, and if you think about video games, like discussing in the way of keeping consciousness low, like how many people waste their life playing video games, and video games keep you in a very low state of consciousness, keeps you trapped, you know, like,
I guess that answers that.
I'm not saying necessarily video games are evil in themselves, but oftentimes it leads to that, you know, like, or like even like blue light itself, you know, like it destroys your mitochondria and keeps you on a lower level of life. So, I mean, that could be one explanation for it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And another symbol, moving on to a different symbol, is the Freemason checkerboard. So I recently watched a video where a guy was just walking through, I believe it was downtown London, and there's so many houses / apartments / buildings that are the number 33, which is a Masonic number. But the checkerboard, I think, is really interesting because that's oftentimes on the entryway of these apartments and these places. It's right where everybody who enters the facility has to walk over it. But it's also on. Is this a British police hat?
Yeah,
it's on their hat, and it's on their cars. What exactly does the checkerboard represent?
So the checkered board represents a lower form of reality. It's like the material low level realm. So like this gets into like the symbolism of games, you know, like obviously you have chess. So the Freemasons had this idea that all this kind of normal, what we refer to as the world or something like that, is this like game that can be moved around. And an important thing to notice is like, even if you're a king, you're still a part of the game. You're still existing on this lower level.
You're on the board.
Yeah, in the checkered board, it's black and white, so it's like it's like a sort of base understanding of things. You have a very simplistic understanding, and it's either black or white. And so like if you look at like a lot of this like Freemason art, they'll usually they'll have the checkered board, and then they'll have a ladder going up into. Sometimes it's the eye. Sometimes which is actually the ladder is a biblical symbol. You know, you have Jacob's ladder. So the Freemasons borrow, again, they're kind of building on more ancient sort of symbolism. The checkered board you'll see it in like Islamic art and stuff like that too. I don't think they mean the same things that the Freemasons mean, but when you look at the police hat that I have here, it's the band is surrounding the head, or even like the third eye, quote unquote. So it's sort of this idea that like they almost like you are trapped. You know, your mind is trapped in this material game world, you know, that you think is real. But the Freemasons, these enlightened beings, quote unquote, they know the truth and they're transcending that. But like in Freemasonry is interesting because oftentimes when people talk about it, they talk about it as like being this malicious sort of force, which it definitely has been is in a lot of senses, but it wasn't. It's hard to know if it was that at its inception. And there are definitely Freemasons that I don't agree with them, but they weren't evil in the sense that they wanted good things for the world. I would argue that there was some pre-lust and spiritual illusion going on there, but they looked at the checkered board more as like they were trying to help like liberate people from it. You know, their goal was to have people get out of this game to like actually experience some form of like higher knowledge or something like that. But then it when you start doing things like wrapping around police hats, then it becomes almost a mocking like satanic symbol of like you're just you're a dumb plebeian who like you can't even see. Yeah, you're a pawn in our game, And so like initially it doesn't seem like it was that, but it becomes that because you get these bad actors and malicious forces that start to infiltrate these groups. And there's a very interesting talk by one of the leaders of one of these lodges, who he was I forget which rite this was, but he was talking about how he wanted the disbandment of all Freemason organizations because he felt that they had been infiltrated by some very like evil forces, and he was kind of discussing this. So even the Freemasons themselves recognized this at a certain point in time, that like they were being controlled, and it's kind of like when feds nowadays, they infiltrate all the groups. I don't know if you've been watching those coup videos about the Oklahoma City bombings at all, but have you seen those videos at all?
Like 2 of them.
Well, he discusses, there was that one, it was called like the Aryan Patriot Association, the ARA, I think is, and it was like a United States group, and they were doing like these highly efficient bank robberies, where they would get in 90 seconds and get out, like get in, get out within 90 seconds and have the money and stuff. And it came out later that literally every single person was a Fed. All of them were government feds.
And I mean the plot to I think it was the plot to kidnap the governor of, I forget exactly which state it was, but it turned out that was like basically completely planned by the feds. And a recent one that came out maybe a month or so ago, I'm not exactly sure, was the pipe bomb during January 6th. I don't know did you follow that story at all when it was happening?
I've never heard about that.
I'm not exactly super well versed on it, but somebody supposedly had a pipe bomb and they were going to plan it, and they used this as fuel to prosecute the people that they were prosecuting, and it turns out the person with the pipe bomb was a Fed. And yeah, her identity came out and everything lately. So yeah, that's a scary thing. That seems to be something that happens almost with every single institution that's created, is this malicious infiltration. And I think that's something that people have to be very, very aware of. And it's kind of a scary thing, you only need to fear God in this life, but it's something you should be aware of. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's just kind of like that, where they will take something like these militia groups, who, in my mind, like I agree with them. I think that there should be some sort of, that the U.S. population should have some form of standing army. I mean, that's what the founding fathers, that's what the whole kind of point of the initial
country.
Exactly. But like now they wanted to really demonize that. So like they put in their own people to start blowing up government buildings and all that. And if you actually look, like no like militia group organically has actually like committed at least in the United States, has committed like an act of terrorism like this. It's always feds. And there was this thing called the Patriots something, like Operation Patriot, whatever, which was the stated goal of it was to infiltrate these groups and try to make them look bad, and that's what the whole Timothy McVeigh and all these people were involved with. They were all government informants and feds.
Keep your head on a swivel.
That's kind of we're sidetracking a little, but this kind of speaks, that can almost be wrapped back into it, in that like symbolism is similar in the sense that like oftentimes these symbols start out as ways of teaching people in virtue as kind of things, but they get co-opted and inverted. They get inverted,
perverted.
and then they start getting used by bad actors, and then they get associated with things that are satanic, even though initially they may have been something that represented something that was more good, or more trying to point people towards the truth or something like that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, so I see we have all planet symbols are made up of 3 parts: a cross, a circle, and a crescent. We covered the crescent. We briefly mentioned the cross. Would you mind covering the circle?
Yeah. So the circle is the sun usually. So like the circle, again, it's a geometrical pattern that it represents, at least in one sense, it represents kind of the containing of energy, and so if you look at it, you can, I would just say at this part, just put up like the different not astrological symbol, not the zodiac symbols, but the symbols for the planets themselves, like Mercury and stuff like that. And so you have so the sun or the circle would be a more masculine kind of symbol, and then you have the crescent, the moon, is a more feminine symbol, and then you have the cross. The cross almost represents like the intersection of these two things, like where the divine, I don't want to use too loaded language here, but where the passive and the active forces meet, where the male and the female forces meet, and symbolically, the cross kind of represents like the intermediary point, the intersection. And so, and it's true, like if you look at like any of these things, that they're all made up of these 3 symbols without exception. They all have, well, the sun has a dot in the middle of it, I guess. So that's kind of, but yes, they all have that symbolism too. And that comes from, I also read that in Agrippa somewhere.
I also see that you have chevron has a shield. What's the esoteric significance of a shield?
Well, shield is like coat of arms. Like if you look at old like European like crests and stuff like that, they're often shields.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't really be able to tell you shields also you have like the shield of Achilles, which is a more ancient symbol, and it had like all these different. You can like Google the shield of Achilles. It has these different like gods and these kind of things on it. I think it kind of just represents sort of defense or defensive posture, is one way to look at it. I don't know the deeper esoteric meaning to that one specifically though. Like a sword. I know a sword represents like air. So the with the 4 elements you have. So you have like the tarot decks, right? They have there's the wands, the pentacles, the swords, and the cups. So cups are water, pentacles are earth, pentacles are coins with pentagrams on them. Swords are air, and wands are fire. And so swords represent air because I don't actually know. Well, actually, so these things were also depicted as different parts of like the human mind. So like air is like the intellect. Earth was like the physical body. Fire is almost like, it's sort of similar. So like air is like the mind. Fire is almost like the something. It's kind of similar to thinking, but it's almost like a divine inspiration sort of thing, like a divine fire or something like that. And then water is the emotions, the emotional elements of things. And so this stuff gets very deep, but like the sword is like the mind, it's like a sharp kind of mind that can cut through things. So that could be one way of looking at it, I guess.
So we're going to have to, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. We're going to have to tap into our inner interesting books reviewed here and try to be careful with the language we use. So bear with us. This might sound a little strange with the way we're going to have to word some of these things, but I think it's important that we dive into it. Let's talk about this diaper here.
The swirls.
The swirls. So we could say people that like younger folks.
Pasta fins.
Pasta fins. People that like younger folks. The swirl.
I almost like, I don't, this is sort of a different topic that we can discuss it briefly. But I think it's interesting to discuss it in the way of like how this stuff, like, you know, a lot of these things we've been discussing, it's more kind of abstract things about magic. When you get into this element of it, you start to realize that like the connection to like things like human trafficking and the evils, like in a more concrete sense, like the PDF files sort of stuff.
Yeah, and this is where like the rubber really hits the road with what I was describing earlier, how some of this other stuff, you're not going to see people in hoods around a fire, but with this stuff, this is where that stuff's a little more prevalent.
Yeah, so like, again, it's hard to know what you can say here, but like when people were researching all of this, like a lot of the symbolism came out in even things like movies, or like the signs of certain restaurants that were owned by certain people who were being implicated. I don't know if you can even say the names of them without getting flagged.
And this doesn't as far as I know, it doesn't specifically pertain to pasta defense, but the Los Angeles sheriff badge has.
Yeah, yeah, it has. Explicitly, it has it.
The swirl, that is.
The swirl, yes. And if you know the swirl, it's the triangle swirl. Explicitly, it's that. There's a Disney movie also called Flight of the Navigator, which is, I have all these images saved on my phone. I can send them to you so you can just kind of display them. The Flight of the Navigator is about a young boy who gets abducted by aliens. And if you connect that with, this is a topic for a different podcast, but if you connect that with things like Project Monarch and SRA, you know, ritual abuse and these kinds of things, so a lot of the UFO stuff gets directly connected with mind control, with hypnosis, and with the creation of Manchurian candidates and dissociative identity disorder. And so the swirl is that. The swirl is a dissociative symbol. And
often associated with hypnotism.
Hypnotism, yes. And so going back to Flight of the Navigator, you have like a young boy being abducted by aliens, whatever that's a metaphor for. And then when the steps of this spaceship are like come out, it's literally the swirls. It like explicitly it's the swirls. The swirl was also in Disney's It's a Small World. The section on Greece had it's the same symbol. It's not even like it's the same. It's not just a swirl. It's sometimes when you look into this stuff, you can kind of argue like swirls have existed, and like if you look at like
Moana, I think we've talked about.
Yeah, like in tribal cultures, you'll see swirls and stuff like that. It's not always a pedophile symbol. It's just because that, but like specifically the triangle is like almost, if you see it as like the swirl as a triangle like that, you're probably looking at
something
at something connected to that. So some people looked at like, you find like the Jungle Book CDs, like the old animated ones had like those swirls on it. You can argue, you know, it does have a young boy with like
loincloth.
Yeah, with a loincloth and a bear. So like, and there's there is a snake that hypnotizes people in that movie. So like, you know, it's kind of a lot of, who knows for sure, but like, this is kind of another whole other topic, but like you will, if you see the swirl, you know, you should be careful.
Yeah, be very wary. It's a symbol.
And we're talking about it. The thing what we have on our papers is it's Diapers for the Lion King has these swirls on it, and explicitly it has the triangle one that you can see there. I believe NAMBLA also had a swirl like that. National Man Boy Love Association.
I see.
Yes. I don't know if they exist anymore, but this was like a thing.
Not publicly.
Yeah. These evil kind of people.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. We mentioned briefly the kind of the, and could be a whole nother episode. A lot of this stuff could be the dissociation, kind of the importance of that with a lot of these things and how central it is. You have Windows disassociation logo here.
Oh, I don't. That was me just kind of riffing. I honestly don't have anything for that. I was thinking, well, this is my own speculation.
Yeah.
This is, so take this with a definite grain of salt. But you could almost look at the window, like a window being a form of like, or like a. Yeah, I know you've watched like the PsyOp Cinema episodes where they talk about the mind control stuff and how they bring up like
podcast.
Alice in Wonderland, through the looking glass. Yeah. Sort of something similar to that motif of like you're looking through glass at a created reality, that it's something that is being put on you, and a window being explicitly that as like a forced view into a specific section of reality that's limited. That's my own kind of thinking about it. Again, do with that information what you will. I think this is an important thing to remember, kind of connected to that, a window is Black Mirrors. So Black Mirror, so there used to be this thing called a scrying, well, they still exist now, but called a scrying mirror, where you would take a black substance, whether it be obsidian or glass, and it would be polished to a sheen, and they would use this to talk to entities, to talk to demons, but whatever they thought that they were speaking to. And if you think about a black mirror, like every like phone screen and every like monitor it's literally a black mirror. And so you could kind of view the window logo as something like that you're looking into this other created reality, like the internet is almost explicitly like an alternative sort of reality, a different reality,
Yeah, I'm sure it's just a coincidence though. So I've gone over all this evidence. Viewers can come to their own conclusions.
Well, before we wrap it up, I want to really quick, let's see if there's anything I missed.
The DC logo caught my my attention. Is it the star?
The DC logo, or
is that not? That's not DC. Is it the above the Chanel logo to the top right of Gucci near MasterCard? For people, if they don't see this paper, they're gonna be so.
Chanel. Oh yeah, that's the. So it's called the. I didn't actually know about this one until I discussed it. It's the. I believe how you say it is the Vesica Pisces, and it's a geometrical symbol. You could look at it a couple ways. Well, it's two crescents connected to one another. It also could be a specific part of the body if you look a female part of the body if you look at it that way. But you'll see this in a lot of different places, and it I don't have a good understanding of this one like the other ones, but it's sort of the merging of things, the merging of like you look at the MasterCard logo, it's like, or where things cross, where two things meet, and you have like, you've probably seen like a Venn diagram before. It's sort of similar to that, where like this is the overlap of symbolism. But I don't really know enough about it to speak in depth like I've spoken about the other stuff. One last one. I don't know. I think I put this somewhere, but Red Bull. Red Bull
the best tasting energy drink.
I don't know if I agree with that. I like Red Bull. Well, I don't. When I do drink an energy drink, it might be my favorite. But Red Bull is the bull in the sky, which is Taurus, but it's Mithra or Mitra.
Specifically, a red bull.
I don't know if it's talked about specifically as red in Mithraism. I'm not sure. But the bull in the sky, the kind of creation myth of Mithraism is that the Mithra himself goes and he slays the bull in the sky, and the blood of the bull spills out and creates the world, creates the cosmos. And so like a bowl in the sky could be viewed that way, and it's in front of the sun, and Mithra is associated as like the sun god. He's it's Sol Invictus, I think, which is connected with Mithraism, which is, you just have to look in this. I don't know enough about it to really get into that, but it was a Roman cult that was based around mainly people in the military, which Sol means sun, and Invictus, I means, I don't remember, but it's like the center, something like that is what it's referring to,
Full circle. Red Bull gives you wings. It's back to the back to the wings. Interesting. Is there any other ones that you wanted to Twitter?
Oh yes, yeah. This one, this is one I found out for myself that like I haven't seen anyone else really bring up this connection before. But Twitter is a blue bird, which is I was reading a book on mind control, and it's the kind of one of the precursor operations to MK Ultra was Project Bluebird. Which is another one of these mind control kind of things. And actually, I was driving the other day, and one of the bus, like a school bus, the company name was Bluebird.
Oh yeah,
and I had never seen that before. I was like, dang, I didn't realize that. So Bluebird, being, again, if you don't think Twitter is mind control, I don't know what it is. Or also the X logo after Elon Musk changed the name of Twitter and stuff. It is explicitly, it's half of the Freemason logo. It just says, if you can find this on, if you just Google like X logo Freemason, it'll show like how this is like, it's just one half of, if you like mirror it and put it together, it makes the square and compass. So yeah, that I thought that was interesting. Bluebirds are also, it's not just the name of an operation. In this book, it's called Project Mind Control. He's interviewing a past victim of who was in the military, and he's telling a story. And at the end of it, he discusses how he developed this obsession for some reason with certain tattoos, and one of these tattoos is a blue bird that he discusses. So not only is it the name of an operation, but it's almost like this marker of this, what we're discussing here. And so to have it be your company logo, I think is
coincidence.
Sus.
And then the butterflies, that's a whole nother episode. But dude,
yeah,
as a person who has been on a college campus a good amount, it's crazy. They're the butterfly tattoos are everywhere, and it's a beautiful insect, but I mean, it is crazy. Like the percentage of women that have that tattoo is wild. Whenever you learn the implications of it. Well, does that cover the main ones you wanted to cover?
I think that's we discussed kind of a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a tricky thing. We went in more depth on some compared to others, and maybe in the future we can make full episodes on specific ones. This is just kind of a general synopsis, so I think it's important to note that. But I did want to say, so we've gone over all this. So for the person that maybe was kind of vaguely aware at the monster logo, or not aware at all, maybe, and then they see all this, they see this kind of clear pattern. Is there any like practical implications going forward? Any advice you would have for when you notice these things, like, oh, like I'm gonna boycott this company, or is it just something to be aware of and kind of doesn't really change the way you live your life?
I mean, I don't really know if I could give like a call to action on anything associated with this. I think what's important is just recognizing that, one, someone's always trying to influence you is the important thing. And you're going to be influenced. It's just kind of a nature of how we exist. No one exists in like a hermetically sealed vacuum, like your ideas are always going to be conditional upon the things you've been taught and what people have told you. And, but I think it's just important to realize that people are casting spells on you, that they're trying to influence you in a certain way. And when you recognize that, you can kind of then see that like, oh, this idea that I just kind of took for granted has actually been something that I've been programmed with, and that and maybe I shouldn't, I can kind of move away from that more sort of internally. So I think really like that's what I find useful about this sort of study. And just the recognition, and also like the study of itself is a fascinating one, just like the reading of things about symbolism. And like I do think you can get like beyond it being like a tool of control, it can be a thing for liberation. It can be something that like it can deliver you certain ideas in a certain language that you just can't express things in normal kind of everyday parlance. But like you're saying, as far as like a strict thing of like, oh, should you stop drinking Monster Energy drink because it has the 666 symbol on it, or should you
don't use Google Chrome,
or should you not use Google Chrome? Yeah, it's like to me, it's much more about understanding the wider patterns. Like, if you understand like what Google is doing with like mass surveillance and stuff, like but do you have to have an understanding of the symbolic meaning? It's again, I think it overlaps. It's reality isn't a compartmentalized thing. It's a thing that if you understand one element, it illuminates other elements. It's kind of like if you have you have a cave with a bunch of torches in it. Like if you light one torch, you can see the other torches. The other torches become slightly more illuminated, and then you go to that torch and light that one, and the other torch and light that one, and then hopefully at some point you'd have the whole cave illuminated. But then you're still in the cave. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have any kind of interesting sort of?
I think that was a perfect analogy, eloquently said. I think that's a good
the
spot.
The muse gave it to me.
The muse is whispering in your ear, dude. I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Sweet.
Let us know what you think.
Leave a comment.
Like, subscribe. But yeah, thank you for listening. I hope this was coherent. I feel good about it. Be aware of all the satanic imagery around you. But yeah, it's fascinating. It's eye opening is what it is. But yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
All right, sweet.